Jane Vitale, aunt of legislator Ben Vitale, Sherwood Bollert, former congressman for upstate New York, Peter Marinka, former county employee in the county clerk's office. The proclamations for the United Way Day in Cayuga County, Friday, September 24th, has been presented.
Before our presentation, we may have some public to be heard here on the phone. I'm going to open the public to be heard section of this meeting. I think there are some people waiting.
Hi, Suzanne, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Hi.
Hi, Suzanne. So go ahead and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Suzanne Wagner. I'm the head of operations at in Owasco, 89 Letchworth Street. We are a group of companies in the entertainment business owned by Jody Meyer, who was born and raised here in Auburn. As some of you may know, Joey is the creative force behind the band Manowar. They have sold over 30 million records worldwide, and they play for audiences ranging from 10,000 to 80,000 people a night, with a new tour scheduled actually for next year. Joey is also an accomplished audio engineer, and he built Valhalla Studios up in Owasco, which we opened to the public end of 2019. One of the accomplishments that we are very proud of is that the soundtrack to the movie Judas and the Black Messiah was mixed here, and that movie won 2 Academy Awards last year and many other awards, actually. The idea that we have developed that we would love to present is a teaching facility for the entertainment business here in Auburn, New York. Some of you may know Full Sail University in Florida. They started with something similar, but very small in the late 80s, and they now teach 20,000 students on campus and online, generating hundreds of millions of dollars, not just for the university, but also for the businesses around them. And we believe we can do the same here in Auburn. We have the people, we have the equipment, and we have the expertise. And Joey is living proof that Auburn, New York can be the springboard to an international career. We can market this university to millions of followers that we have around the world. And we have multiple connections that could bring in famous guest speakers and all the components that can make education in Auburn sexy, if you allow me the expression. We believe there are great opportunities for Auburn and Finger Lakes region and its businesses if we do this. There will be students and their families and visitors who will generate income, not just for the school, but for hotels, restaurants, the wineries, the entertainment businesses here, clubs, and so forth. It's basically what Joey has done the last 40 years without making a big deal about it, but he has brought in international stars and generated millions for the local businesses. We envision collaborations with local businesses here, downtown Auburn, the merry-go-round, and so forth. And we would love to help promote Auburn and add to its history, because after all, it stands not only for Harry Tubman and William Stewart, but also for Theodore Case, the father of sound of film. And we would love to continue this tradition. We've talked to people here in the local community, and they love this idea and saw the opportunities on hand, and we would very much appreciate the opportunity to present this in more detail to you all. So that was my information. If there are any questions in the time frame available, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And thank you everyone for your time and attention.
Anyone else?
No, okay. Yeah, no, they're scheduled.
Thank you. Okay, this evening, up next on the agenda, we have a presentation on the American Rescue Plan. Both Lynn Marinelli and I are going to deliver this presentation. Go back to this next page. So we finally arrived here at the first step here for the American Rescue Funds to discuss what we could potentially do with these funds that have come to us from the federal government. We have spoken a lot about this, but I wanted to make sure we categorize all this information. The American Rescue Fund's eligible spending categories are to first support public health response. Second, address negative economic impacts due to COVID. Number 3, replace public sector revenue loss. And the last one, certainly not least to us, water and sewer, as well as broadband infrastructure. So what we did here in the county is we asked our department heads and some partner agencies for their recommendations and for their needs in the form of a proposal. And they all went through our budget director, Lynn Marinelli. So they submitted projects to us over the course of the past 6 weeks or so. The requests were grouped by eligible spending categories. The ARPA funds available to Cayuga County are $14,873,990. The funds must be obligated by 2024 and spent by 2026. Just so you're aware, we have a little bit of time, but they must be obligated by the end of 2024. And Lynn's going to go through each category.
Yeah, I'm gonna, go through each of the requests. They're not in any particular order, but we did group them by the eligible category for the ARPA funds. So the first area would be the public health response. The first thing which we have already obligated was for the health department's response. This would include vaccination, testing clinics, contact tracing, et cetera, pretty much any needs they might happen to need. We have already obligated $200,000 for that. The next one was a request for the Office for the Aging, looking to expand some of their office space for social distancing. That's $30,000. Foster care payments to parents for some additional duties that they had to take on during the COVID when the schools are closed. They really went above and beyond and really weren't compensated for all the additional duties that they had to do to be the homeschool teachers and being foster parents at the same time. That's a project that has been proposed by DSS. Similar to that, there's another proposal for foster care parents for recruitment and retention. This would be a multi-year program where they would be kind of some incentives for recruiting people and also for taking children for some of our current parents, because we really are always really trying hard to get more parents, and we're going to have to be putting more kids in foster homes than institutions. Another idea would be a multiple mental health and DSS, working on the mobile crisis team expansion to expand that program. That would be around $108,000. Another program would be the Sterling Nature Center facility project. As you know, they have to have some grants, and the project is pretty much funded, but there has been an increase in expenditures related to COVID, really, for building materials that have kind of increased the price, and they're looking to fill the gap to be able to finish that project. So that's what the $385,000 represents there. Another item would be a homeless shelter. There is no cost at this time for that. DSS has been working with a couple of other agencies and OTDA, and they would be hoping that a lot of it would be funded through some grants from New York State, but there probably would be a local cost of some sort, but that's kind of unclear at this time what that would be. The next area would be addressing negative economic impacts. We already had the restaurant voucher program here, and that was $100,000 that was already obligated towards that. Next, there is something for Cayuga County Water and Sewer. They have had some lost revenue related to unpaid water fees. It said that a moratorium was placed on that you couldn't, turn someone's water off, and they also couldn't even re-levy the unpaid water onto the property taxes. So that's kind of just a loss in revenue for them right now. So they were asking for $35,000 for that. And then another project for some employment and training. They're looking to get some more laptops for job seekers. So that would be helping people to get reemployed now, since COVID is hopefully ending a little bit for that. So the next area, this is what we call the replacing the public sector revenue loss, where we have the flexibility to spend the money on pretty much, you know, anything that would be supporting government services. So pretty general category here. The first thing we have is the Emerson Park revitalization, where we've already obligated $1 million. Next one is the Regional Agricultural Cooperative Extension Team. This was an idea from Cornell Cooperative. I believe it's like it's an employee, $65,000 annually. Next project is the digital record retention system that our county clerk has been talking about for $1.5 million. The next is a request by Employment and Training and Cornell Cooperative for some new cubicles for the new building that they're going to be getting relocated when the college renovates the building on Grand Ave, where Cornell Cooperative used to be. They'll be getting relocated there, and they're going to need some equipment for setting up their office in an efficient manner that they don't currently have. The next two are something from the Highway Department. One's a request to upgrade the fuel system. It'd be about $400,000. The next request is replacing one of the salt storage sheds with a larger storage shed that would be able to hold more salt. So I think when we, you know, are getting better prices, also we'll be able to have a bigger capacity for retaining salt. An extra couple from the Sheriff's Department, replacing portable radios in the jail, $240,000. Replacing bulletproof vest to $32,000. And the body cameras for the Sheriff's Office that they have been talking about, it's about $228,000 for that project. Continuing on, they also have a request for tasers for the custody division of $69,000. The next is a comprehensive list that we can share in detail later, but this is involved a lot of capital improvements to county-owned buildings, the county office building, the HPO, the courthouse, Dill Street. This would include roofs, paving in a lot of sites, elevators, HVAC upgrades, totaling up to $2.5 million. The next one is some IT requests. There's some large infrastructure requests that are required for the radio towers, replacing unsupported network equipment in a lot of the buildings. Also, they've included replacing the mobile devices in the sheriff's vehicles that need to be replaced. So that's about $1.2 million for those projects. Then we had a request by Soil and Water for some surveying equipment they don't currently have that they would like to have. The next is a public safety and fire training facility for the county to basically upgrade it and expand and rebuild classrooms, improve the training tower, just kind of modernize that whole facility. The next one is a 911 request for the 911 towers, the UPS replacements, $316,000 for that. And the last request was from the treasurer's office, and it would be some fixed asset software for about $40,000. One of the other categories, this is one category, even though it is water, sewer, and broadband, they just kind of group it together as one category. We have quite a few requests from the Cayuga County Water and Sewer Authority. I've just grouped together here. One's expanding and improving water and sewer services in the county. They'd like to get funds to perform the seeker for some regional water project, if that was to move forward. They had a program for providing an alternate connection to the water supply from Auburn, transferring the county sewer line at County House Road, and expanding some sewer equipment maintenance projects that they could do for other people. So that was about $1.3 million, their total request. And Sewer and Water Conservation District also had several projects in mind. They have a green infrastructure project, culvert assessments and evaluations throughout the county, and culvert replacements, an aquatic vegetation harvester, and a cover crop program and storm water management programs, a total of $1.9 million. The next project we have here is the work on towards the water treatment plant in Aurora. This would be mainly the intake pipe for that project at $325,000. And, the broadband expansion project, however, whatever form that would take, and that cost for that would be unknown at the time too.
Okay, so other ideas that have come up for the ARPA funds. First of all, we are working on a regional water project for a second source of water. That's an entirely huge project. Certainly, there are parts of that project to consider. Renovating the county office building. The Board of Elections is also requesting new office location. Waiving of interest and penalties on delinquent property taxes during this time. We have an idea to pursue grant opportunities for Cayuga County not-for-profits that our county could administer, or we could hire somebody to administer a program. You put aside a few $100,000 and you could ask for proposals that we could ask for. It could be a loan or it could be a gift. And then overall loans for local businesses. So overall, the summary of the categories that we've netted, throughout this process. For public health response, $863,000. Negative economic impacts, about $150,000. For water and sewer, $3,500,000. Total requests for above, you see, over $4.5 million. So spending on the required categories altogether is $6.8 million. So there are still available $2.2 million available for the have to buckets that we must put the money toward based upon what we've already received. Now, we do know that the homeless shelter was not been spec'd out or thought about in depth, right? So there's something that we could certainly spend every penny on. Certainly there are things that people may not have thought of yet, have not come to our attention yet, but that's certainly, we have 2.2 approximately available left if we were to spend this money for the have to categories. Total allowable spending for revenue loss, which we've talked about, is over $8 million that we were able to calculate using that formula. So that's something that we could spend on virtually anything. And total revenue loss request is $9 million, over $9 million. So overall, you've just gotten a sense of what's being asked of us. Certainly, I'd like you to see all of the requests. So the next steps are you'll be provided the spreadsheet that we've received that's in detail of all the requests. And then I'm hoping that discussions will take place in each caucus to help prioritize how you want to spend this money. At the end of the day, the Cayuga County Legislature, you guys have to, and all of us collectively need to decide how we want to spend this money and what are our priorities as a county moving forward. So you've gotten a picture from all of our departments, which represent the county. And we can, certainly think about how some of this other funding can be, like I said before, used for non-for-profit organizations, either for particular projects or to be funneled through their organization for whatever programs they also provide for the community. I'm planning a work session at a special legislature meeting following Ways and Means in October to discuss priorities and ideas that perhaps you've come up with in your caucuses, so we can start to think about how we want to delineate all this information and all this sort of big asks of these projects. So I do know in talking with some of you, you definitely have priority in mind. I think of the fire training tower. I had a conversation with Mark Strong about that. He's on the fire advisory board. He has, intimate knowledge of how that can be improved, and the requests that have been kind of ongoing for years about that improvement. So that is something, that you may see as a priority. I don't know, and I haven't spoken with all of you about this. I don't know collectively what your priorities are. But keep in mind, this money is one-time money, and it should not be used for ongoing expenses. It should be used as a one-time expense, and hopefully with sustainable outcomes. So that's what I would like you to think about. I'd like you to look at that complete list in your caucuses separately, either by email or however, but I want you to discuss amongst yourselves, and then we'll get together as a whole group at the special legislative meeting following Ways and Means, and we can have an open discussion about, what you're finding, what you're discovering. I don't know about many of you, but I do know that it feels as though I've won the lottery and everyone is a relative and they're coming out of the woodwork and saying, we've got ideas, I'm sure you're all experiencing the same thing. So it'd be good to sit together and think about what is our priority collectively as the Cayuga County Legislature in spending this money. Elaine?
Just for clarification, 14.8 million, we've already received 7. Is that what I had heard that's already here? Is that what, are we planning for the whole 14 million really, even though, and is there strings attached to this, getting more of it after the 7? I mean, is that how this will work?
I don't think they've really been clear that you'll automatically get it, depending on maybe what I have planned for. I mean, go ahead.
At the NACO conference, Treasury said, no, there are no strings, you're gonna get the second 7.
At a date specific, that'll just.
Well, next year, they didn't say.
Right,
on
Yeah,
it.
probably in the spring again.
What they did say is if you spend it inappropriately, they will come asking for it back. So, but they said there are no strings to the second payment. Now, that could change. But that's what Treasury is saying now.
Mr. Vitale?
I noticed a couple of them. There's grants already out. For instance, the sheriff and the body cam. Do the spreadsheet, get some asterisks on those, so I think the legislators have an idea that their money's already being invested, and so we take that into consideration.
Thank you. It's also important to note that the infrastructure bill that we're waiting on, will have monies available for our county. We have to go through a process to get that money, but it is going to be available to us. So we have to keep that in mind as well, because if this is one-time money and we can get it somewhere else, well, we want to make sure that we use this money for something special that we are having trouble funding that elsewhere. Mr. Lattimore, then Mr. Foley.
Last night, Elaine and I were at the watershed meeting, and I think a priority should be our clean water. And I know that, the water line to Aurora is important for economic development. But I would think that maybe we would look at, would it make sense? They were talking about, Nick Colas was talking about all the different septic systems that are there. Whether sewer system might be able to capture some of that leakage that comes off of those. So I hope we're use our imagination, and I would like to check different counties. I know that our neighboring county, Onondaga, is building, for public health, a number of fields for soccer and lacrosse and stuff. So maybe some other counties have got some better ideas than what we have, but I'd like to maybe look at that. And number one, with this money, can we get a grant writer who's maybe can even expand on the pile of money, the lottery money that you just won, and maybe we can get more relatives. I come from a family of 12. They'd eat that up pretty quick. So hopefully we can get a creative grant writer to maybe multiply the monies that we're looking at.
You brought up a good point as well. And other counties are thinking of all kinds of interesting things, and I was able to talk with them about that at the NISAC conference this month. One of the things even that Lynn had heard was a sort of a grant program to help clean up your downtowns for all the small villages and towns. Some money to just clean Main Street, invest in some new signage, small but impactful projects that are hard to fund some days because we've all been operating on lean budgets for so long. So yes, but there's definitely opportunities to think
Yeah.
about all this.
I mean, I was talking to one of the farmers last night who's definitely gonna use the capture program for the methane and put it into the pipeline. And hopefully we can get some green energy projects maybe that make sense, that might improve the environment around the lake. So hopefully we can help out maybe some of our industries that might need a little help with being creative.
Hey, Mr. Foley?
Yeah, I think we're aiming for like one-time projects. And what ideally I hope we can focus on is items that maybe don't have high cost of maintenance to maintain going forward. I don't know if that is included in the spreadsheet or not, if you're going to email to us, but it would really be a disservice if we invest in all of these great components and then 3 years from now, 5 years from now, things start breaking down. And we have to raise taxes or use fund balance in order to maintain the stuff, the new shiny objects that we just purchased. So, I'll be trying to keep that in mind as we're making our priorities, but I hopefully maybe some of the department heads included some type of estimate long-term maintenance cost or legacy costs.
Thank you. That's a very good point.
I would just like to say, I think that like when we do get involved more in detail in something we're interested in, you're going to talk to the department. They gave me very brief, announcement. We have not delved into, there's too many things here to spend hours in something we're not interested in. And I think though it's a good timing to be doing this right now to work in the budget, because some of these items you might want to say, I do want to do this, but not with ARPA funds. Maybe I want to use the 2020 budget to just purchase the item. Maybe we want to see if the fund balance can afford to pay for it. Maybe it's something, an obligation that you feel the county should be doing anyhow. And like you said, you don't want to spend a special kind of money on it. So I think it's a nice time to actually be seeing, what can we fit in maybe the 2021 budget, if we have some extra funds or extra budget. So it's a good time.
Mr. Bettman? Oh, I'm sorry, and then we'll do Mr. Dennison. Sorry, I see your hands up. You can go first, Keith.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like when you do the spreadsheet, because we need that reminder, I think, these funds cannot be used to match federal funds. So if we're pursuing a federal grant, we can't use these funds to meet the local match. And that's
Correct,
really
not the
important to
match,
keep in
right,
mind.
not the match.
Yeah, it's real important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask about October 19th, is that a firm date? That's really, that's not a lot of time. And as the majority caucus leader, I have not set up any meetings to discuss these. And it's my experience is it's not that easy to get a time when people can get together. And I find that it's also, my experience is it's not that productive to try to have email discussions, at least with our caucus. But so we don't have to talk about that tonight, but I need two things from you. One, to know if that's a firm date, and secondly, what the expectation is. Because it's not terribly helpful that we're going to talk about it and then get together and talk about it. I don't know if we're supposed to narrow it down, if we're supposed, I don't know, but if you can send some direction to me and Mr. Pinckney, I bet you would appreciate that as well.
Yes, I want you to set some priorities. Yes, but you're not going to know those priorities until you have a discussion
Right.
that people are not willing to have right here.
Yeah.
We'll get
No, I
15
think it's a good
priorities. So it's
plan.
time
I'm just
to
not
let it-
sure if we can meet the
Let
deadline.
it set it, take the information in that we'll be sending you, read through it, think about it, print it off, get a highlighter, talk to some people. But no, it's not firm. If you and Mr. Pinckney would prefer to move it out to November, that's the point of this, is that is okay, because we do have time with this project.
Okay, thank you.
So, that's okay with you.
We've started in our caucus briefly talking about products, nothing to this degree of the list, but the sooner we start chatting about it. the better, I think.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
one more idea with I know that we're talking about a theater festival merry-go-round has been a very good draw in the area. As, you know, back in the day, Deauville Island was a tremendous draw. Would be nice, the person who was on the line tonight speaking is a musical person. I mean, wouldn't be too bad. I think there's a little town down in Tennessee called Nashville. It would be nice to have a little music type of thing. Maybe people might even come during the summer. You never know. Like an amphitheater, you know how Syracuse has got?
I'm game.
That's in our plan.
That's in our plan.
Oh, that little thing. Here we go. Good try.
Good try. Oh, Mr. Dennison, thank you for waiting.
Yes, when looking at this, and I don't mean this in a bad way, wish list, because that's technically what it is. Three things that stick out for me that would be definitely the top three is, I mean, we've screwed around with broadband forever, and that has to be at the top of our list because we need to think of the taxpayers. We need to think of the people in this county when we're going through this list. So for me, the other two top ones are helping businesses that have been hurt through this whole thing and the whole, relieving, well, basically those same people of some tax burdens that have been hurt through this whole thing and penalties and whatnot. But broadband, I mean, we've talked about that forever. And if we can get the money to try and finish fixing that issue, that's something we absolutely should, especially with the length of our county and the fact that some at one end, needs 2 soup cans and a string, and some in the middle have perfect broadband and whatnot.
That's good. Thank you. Legislator Kerr?
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions. When we get the spreadsheet, will it include total project costs and potential leverage from other grants, or are we just getting, is the number that we're getting the total project costs?
All I really can provide you with what the department heads gave me, which is total project costs. So like I said, we're gonna have to talk to them when you have more questions and more interest in an area to get them involved, to provide, like I think we're having a good point about ongoing costs, do we have them, do we not? So yeah, it'll just be kind of a raw thing.
So that the numbers we saw tonight is basically the maximum total project cost.
That's what they've estimated. I mean, so, we can find out for them too, to be like, where did you get this number from? None of them have done RFPs, none of them have done anything like that. I mean, some of them are more developed because they've been looking, some of them might have quotes, so they do have actual specific quotes because it was something they've been working on and maybe really wanted to buy. Obviously, the simpler it is, the more concrete, it's gonna be than the bigger projects. So.
And will we at some point have any discussion about leveraging or working with the local municipalities and potentially looking at what projects they're considering and whether or not county support is needed to advance those?
We've touched on a couple of items with the city. I'm not sure how successful that's going to be. But certainly, as things are coming up, and as everyone's sort of going through this, these things are going to naturally evolve. We are, this is the first that we're heading out sort of with this information to come up with a priority list and a plan. So, I'm sure some of this stuff will come together.
And if there are additional projects that we want to get in front of the legislature, how does that process work? Do we have an opportunity to propose projects forward or?
That's what I'm interested in when we meet as a caucus, but also as part of that idea, as I mentioned before, we can set up some sort of a system for proposals from the public and design some sort of, program. It can be a annual program until the money runs out. It could be.
Right, I mean, you could
biennial.
consider a loan program, you could consider, kind of like the federal government did, like the PPP loans, and then they ended up forgiving them. I mean, you could do lots of different things for small businesses who are impacted, like Annie brought up, if you want to bring up not-for-profits, and like we could maybe contract it out, so we wouldn't have to be doing all the administrative work ourselves. There is funding for that. Obviously, you can pay for staff, you can pay for administration. So, that could be something if you're feeling like you want some smaller parts of the counties or really impacted industries to get some recovery, you could propose that. That could be something we could do too.
Before I call it, Mr. Whitman has hand up. Certainly, the restaurant relief voucher program that we ran here was highly successful.
Let's do it again.
And that's the thing. We have money to do it again. We need to talk about that. I will be sending you an email, by the way, to look for that, to decide what we're going to do with that. Highly successful. Many happy businesses. We're sending out a survey to those businesses to get some good feedback. But the feedback we've heard has been incredible. So they were very happy with this. That's sort of the greatest point of this money, is to get it right out there to the folks who have been impacted. So we've already done that. That went well. I think we should consider that again, or consider a multiple for an event like that. I'm going to go with Mr. Whitman, then Mr. Lattimore.
My connection broke up a little during the presentation. Did you say that there was a deadline on spending the funds? Was there like a 2-year window? Is that from start to completion of projects, or?
You have to have the projects actually obligated at the end of 24. But then, as long as it's obligated, you could take until the end of 2026 to finish spending the project out. You would just
Yeah,
need-
'cause that's a big concern to keep in mind. It's going to take more than 2 years to build an amphitheater. We've been 5 years on the broadband project we have going on in the county now with no end in sight. Could be another 3 years for all we know. So when, if we're thinking about spending the money on broadband, we need to be careful on the timeline of things, or, any other large scale projects, because they definitely take a lot of time. So something to keep in mind.
Thank you. And speaking of the broadband in general, a lot of broadband fiber is being laid right now in the county. Just went down Honoka Road, just went down, was it Brown Road?
Yeah.
And these are the far reaches of the county. They're putting fiber in the ground. So I don't want to have two competing interests here. I mean, we're talking, a lot of people are thinking about all different things. I know some communities have talked about getting MiFi or Wi-Fi hotspots and giving those out to residents, and who are in the kind of the far reaches, to give them instant access.
The residents in the far reaches don't have a cell signal either, so they don't really work great. I have 2 of them.
Yes,
Well, definitely, we're gonna have to report in the next few weeks.
Right, okay.
Supposedly maps, we'll see.
Right.
But theoretically, it maps the entire county down to each household.
Each household, right. And then keep in mind the infrastructure money that we could use for that. If we come up with a big project idea. Again, if it's designed for broadband and it's from the federal government, we don't want to compete, right, with these funds. Mr. Lattimore and Mr. Pinckney?
Yeah, 2 things. Talking about broadband, we gotta have a master permit for any contractor working in multi-towns, so that one highway guy or one town can't say, well, you can't come through here. If it's gonna be a countywide project, you've got to have government apps somehow come up with some kind of master permit for the whole county, so that, you gotta stop working, you gotta start working. It's total craziness. And number 1, I would like to see some kind of wireless mic system so we can all hear each other, even in this room.
Mhm.
So maybe we can upgrade our sound system here, talking about broadband, or
It's happening.
it is happening.
It's happening.
When's it gonna come
I'm
in?
not
Yeah,
exactly
from
sure of the
God.
date, but you got your new chair, so you're on your
That's the big
way.
The furniture in the room feels good, but it would be nice if the general public could maybe participate in this thing called government.
Yes, we're saying the audio and visual, so that we are looking at upgrades for those. Thomas Bunn has
Be
been.
nice to
working
have the
with some
front doors
vendors.
open.
Yes, next was Pinky.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to you two for getting this started, and obviously there's miles and miles of conversation to be had. So it's good and it's time and it's good.
Great. I wanted to I was reflecting real quick on what Tim Latimer was saying about broadband and saying get a permit. So I wonder if you could ride with Tucker through town of Victory, right, Tucker? It was Victory, right?
They had issues with the contractor.
Yes,
That was Sterling.
Sterling, okay. Yes, I would take a ride and, and see firsthand what's happening with some of these third party.
I can tell you what's happening, not much of anything.
I think they
I
stopped.
thought somebody took a vacation.
Nothing has happened up here in almost 3 years. Just a bunch of orange conduits sticking out of the ground.
Up next, Mr. Fuller.
I just have one question about how the operation is kind of going to align with our own legislative workings, because like I've had department heads contact me or whatever for their projects, and I'm saying, okay, maybe kind of run through this during the budget process. I know that our budget meetings are starting soon. And so you guys will be, it's good to have Lynn here and yourself, because you'll be more in depth on this project. We'll also be discussing them. And so what projects should we be maybe trying to allow to go through the budget process as opposed to formulating our own legislative way?
Yeah, certainly. I guess just to keep in mind, as we've said it before a million times, this is just this, one-time special money. And if you're looking to increase the operating costs of any department, those are going to be ongoing costs, like, you're thinking about legacy costs or programmatic costs that are just, are going to, raise the budget. Obviously, we need to think long and hard before we enter into that. So, I think about the Dreams Project in your, oversight committee with Sue Dwyer and records retention. That's a huge project. Now, that's a project we need to really consider and think about, because we may have to do that anyway. So it's, that these are the things, that this is going to be the discussion and the kind of give and take of this money. And then there are some things that we've already talked about in our budget meetings that we're saying they're kind of small, they're necessary. You don't need to save that for ARPA money. That's something we can afford to do right now.
Right, I mean, we kind of were talking like, when we put the expenditure in the budget, we've got to fund it, right? So we would put the ARPA funds in as a revenue source, or it could be property tax, or maybe sales tax is high enough, or you use the fund balance. Or we haven't decided yet, and when we're putting the budget together, and then if we go forward and do it, we do a budget. So, regardless of whether it's in the budget, when we process it in the next couple of months, that doesn't mean that the project can't get done in 2022. Because that's what we've done with the other couple projects we did do. We did a resolution, we did an amendment to the budget, and we go forward with it. So, I guess it's not a make or break, right? Did it get in the budget or did it not? It doesn't mean we're not doing the project.
Yes, and keep that in mind, right? Because we have time with this. So just because it wasn't discussed initially when we obligated funds for the restaurant voucher program and Emerson Park didn't mean that didn't make the cut. And just because if it's not included in this presentation tonight, doesn't mean it didn't make the cut. So people just have to be patient. There's 15 of us. We all probably couldn't decide where to go to dinner. So it's going to be kind of a little bit of a trial here, but we can get through it. We can decide what our priorities are. Mr. Batman.
I just want to point out that we need to approach the budget this year the same we always approach the budget. I mean, there's no, this money is extra. And one of the things every year at this time, that someone says, I'll be the first one to say it. We need to be careful about putting things through a committee that is most appropriately looked at in part of the budget process. is that every year we talk about that, creating new positions or creating new projects. That really should be part of the budget discussion as opposed to coming to a committee. So I think we all need to keep that in mind. This is no different in terms of budget. And we should not be putting any projects in through the regular budget process, through committee and so on, that's going to use these funds. That's why we're going to talk about them jointly and make a decision. I just wanted to reemphasize that because it's no different. We do this every year.
Okay, any other questions, Mr. Latimer?
Shared services, there's no way we can get a project with the city and maybe double down on it?
I think we're considering shared service with all of these, actually, so that definitely is, it's on the radar for sure.
They got more money than we do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll send out that information through email. And then I'll talk with the majority minority leaders. We'll talk about when to set up a follow-up work session altogether after you've had ample time to talk in your committees or in your caucuses. Of course, it's a lot to take in. I know it's going to take some time. It's a great thing, though, to think about and talk about. Finally, something really, it's a great opportunities. If that's a challenge, then we're good. Thank you.
Minutes to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Appointments and reappointments.
Second.
All in favor?
Communications and announcements. There was a letter from Assembly Member Anna Kellis and Senator Pamela Helming to Governor Hochul in regard to the Bell Station. And the letter is attached in the packet.
Just for the public, was she in favor of going to the land trust?
I believe in the letter, yes.
Just so.
And the
knows
public,
it's-
it is on the website as well. So if people in the public want to read the letter, they can as well.
There might be something listening.
Up next on our agenda is the CCC report.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Evening.
Madam Chair,
Oh, yes.
I do have a legislative report. Did you want to do that afterwards?
That's next.
We'll do it next.
After the. You're right, never mind.
Dr. Durant, we are all set for you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to just recognize that I believe Trustee Camardo is also with us on the line tonight. Thank him for his time. September is the start of our academic year. It's been a busy month, not only with the traditional beginning of a semester and the adjustments that go on, but certainly as we have been managing the various compliance requests that we have through SUNY. As I believe I mentioned in August, we had to move very quickly to follow suit with the other SUNY colleges and had to put in a mandatory order for our students who had on-campus obligations to be vaccinated in order to continue their enrollment and on-campus obligations. Now, an on-campus obligation could be a course, it could be tutoring, it could be work study, it could be athletics, and etc. So a great deal of effort, trying to have, clinics on our Fulton and Auburn campuses, communicating ongoing with students about options if they wanted to adjust schedules to remote learning or other things during drop periods and so on. So, we have worked towards compliance, and as as the deadline comes and goes, we'll be, making the necessary adjustments to, student schedules that are required of us to be compliant. That being said, we anticipated to be down in enrollment this year, given the applications and so forth over the last 12 months. And although we are down in enrollment, we are ahead of pace currently of what our targeted enrollment is for the 21-22 year. Have a better indication of where we stand by the end of October as the rest of our K-12 partnerships and prison programs and so on get put into our registration portal. But at this point, we do look to be slightly ahead of where we anticipated to be. Our audit process will be kicking off momentarily, I think in the next couple of weeks, with the end of our 2021 year. We certainly feel fortunate to be able to end our year, not only on budget, but being able to use our own CARES funds in both short and long-term strategy. One of the areas that we are able to recognize some funding support is in lost revenue. And given our loss of enrollment over the last year, we are going to be recognizing some of those funds for the lost revenue, and then being able to help us for future planning as we go forward on the operational side of the college. The Fulton AMI project is underway. Construction's underway. We're anticipating completion in December. As of today, we're hopeful that will be open for some programming in the spring semester. The culinary facility is up and open. The first cohort of academic credit-bearing students is going well, and we've been offering a series of non-credit and workforce development courses that are community-oriented that have been really well subscribed. So we appreciate the support of the community and the enrollment that we've been able to experience thus far. We're continuing to look ahead and doing our planning, certainly identifying our goals, working with our trustees, identifying our goals for this year, our strategies. And then over the coming months, we're going to be, rolling up our sleeves back into the strategic plan development as we're trying to continue to look ahead, through the next stages of the pandemic and beyond, hopefully, as the colleges looks to keep positioning itself in the best way we can, given our demographics and our other realities. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Durant?
I have my hand up.
Mr. Dennison?
Yeah, I was just curious, does the mandate cover all faculty and employees at the college also?
No, the mandate at this point originally is on student enrollees. There is not a mandate on faculty and staff. However, we also have mandatory testing in place for all of our students and faculty and staff. If you have not provided appropriate documentation for vaccination, you're required to test weekly. Even if you have provided documentation that you are vaccinated, you're testing every other week. And we're going to continue to work with our labor groups and at the possibility of mandatory vaccination requirements for our entire community. At this point, we're establishing the data to determine what our current scope is within the college itself. We're looking at data that suggests that we're nearing about 90% vaccination rates when it comes to the employee base of the college. We have a fluid part-time employee population, given adjunct status and other roles within the institution, and so we're trying to certify those numbers and have a real good sense of where we stand as an institution.
Great. Legislator Lattimore?
Just to follow up on that, I think New York is getting pretty close to herd immunity, but I might be wrong, and I'm not a doctor, I don't practice medicine. But doctor, in regards to Amazon opening up, and I know we have the advanced manufacturing in Fulton, if we talked about robotics and factory work being instituted up there.
Yeah, we have a consortium of manufacturers in Oswego County that we meet with. We're also looking to engage in some more regional discussions because we know there are emerging companies in surrounding areas that certainly us in Cayuga, we want to be able to be a part of those discussions and from both an economic and human resource development perspective. So, automation, robotics, and, certainly continuing to be in tune with the various regional needs is a priority of ours. And we know that even though we might have had conversations even as recently a year ago or 3 years ago, as I think some of you mentioned earlier, with employers that have been impacted in the region that's been impacted, in some ways, some of these discussions deserve fresh starts because, what we might see in the, near and further ahead future today, I think could be different than what we anticipated it to be 2 to 3 years ago. So that's one of the ways we're trying to lead at the institution is, even if we have identified priorities 2 or 3 years ago, I think that it would be irresponsible to not sort of reset our thinking and affirm that still is the right decision and right time for us, given sort of the new realities that have presented themselves to us.
And also, there's a lot more people going into space. I'd like to see the NASA platform somehow reinstituted. We've got a lot of, the chairwoman has got a lot of money, so maybe we can get that going. Anyways.
Yeah, I heard about the opportunities to be able to put in more requests, so we'll be looking at that from the college as well.
And one more thing, I know that nobody on this floor is politically oriented, but normally it's very nice that the candidates are interviewed in the TV station up at the college. I was there when Rod Serling presented that or opened it up. But anyways, the election cycle is now sooner than later, and people are being interviewed people are already voting when the candidates are on. If you could have Mr. Cosentino somehow reschedule that so that before the election actually starts.
Well, that is partisan. Let's not get into that. Come on.
What's that?
Let's not get into politics.
Politics. It's the college, isn't it? I'm talking to the president.
No, you're not.
Huh?
Come on. Let's not.
Dr. Durant, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
I do not. I just appreciate the opportunity to provide an update tonight.
Great. Thank you for being here with us tonight. And thank you, Mr. Camardo, for joining as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have committee reports or individual legislator reports. Mr. Batman?
Yes. Sorry for being so enthusiastic, but I wanted to bring the legislature up to speed on what we're doing with the hiring bans, because that is, as we said when we presented those and voted on them, it is a work in process. We've got a lot of feedback from a lot of people, and we'll be looking at that. The immediate stuff is this: we're in the process of putting together the policy statements that will actually implement that and guide us going forward. That's being reviewed by the committee. That will then go to this body for review and comment. It will then go to the department heads for review and comment. Then, based upon all of that, we'll come back with the specific policies, modified as appropriate with everyone's input, and that will then be voted on by this body to implement all of that. Part of that process will be consideration of anything that may need changing, either in the short term or long term. And some of the policies have long-term adjustments. And so you can expect that's in process. You can expect to see that shortly. And then from once we've reviewed it, then we'll take it to the department heads to go through the whole process. So everyone has an opportunity to comment. Hopefully come out with something that is workable for the long term. That's the goal here.
Legislator Foley?
Madam Chair, do you have an update in the report about IT?
Do not.
Okay, so I'll give a quick update on that.
Perfect.
You and I sat down with our director, Tom, to look at different options that he has after working in the county for a little while now. He did mention that when he was hired, he would do like a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day analysis of the county's IT infrastructure needs and wants. And that also included the possibility of restructuring the department. And so he does have an outline for that. and he presented it to AD and I. Does want to bring it forward. I think we thought that it looked like something the legislature would want to see and kind of kick around. And he'll be maybe bringing that forward or presenting more details at the very least at the next government operations meeting. So, you know, just, yeah, look out for that.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I'm pleased to see he has lots of really great ideas. There's lots of great cost-saving ideas as well. So, yes, thank you for bringing that up. Legislator Vitale?
I just want to update the legislature on where we are with the regional water project. Last meeting, we approved for the Water and Sewer Authority to move forward with the seeker. At the meeting afterwards, we approved seeker to go forward, and seeker includes everything that we could possibly do in the regional project, along with sewer for Honecker Road, along with a new sewer treatment facility for that area, along with rehabilitating the Aurora sewer treatment facility, along with a new intake at Long Point. But basically, we're covering as many possible aspects as we might move forward with. And the good thing about seeker is once it's approved, any part or anything that's in that can be done. We don't have to go back and do anything again. So we really trying to cover as many possible bases as we can, thus getting us ready for any kind of federal state funding that may come forward. The other thing that will probably come forward to this legislature is that the Water and Sewer Authority is committed to $24,000 to pay for the seeker. And I believe that they will be coming to the legislature to ask for up to half of that. Some of them asked that, you know, the county pay the whole shot. And I argued back that when the map plan project was asked of us, the number was around 125,000. They came with a request for 87.5. We paid the 87.5. A number of us asked several times, are you sure it's enough? Are you sure it's enough? And they said, yes, yes. And now it's not enough. They just weren't thinking that, you know, the seeker would be part of the project. So I kind of pushed back so that they would only be coming to us for half. If this legislature wants to pay for the whole thing, that would be great. But I think sharing in the cost is much more appropriate. The only trouble is, I'll tell you, Water and Sewer Authority doesn't have money to invest in these kind of projects. When we do a project like spending the money for the seeker, we actually have to borrow the money from the other water districts, because you can't have water districts pay for another water district. So say we come up with a $24,000, at some point, we have to pay that back to the water district that we borrowed that from. So it's very difficult for Water and Sewer Authority to move forward with projects without having to borrow money and repay it, and kind of a little bit of a pain in the rear end. But we have committed to move forward, and I'm excited that we are covering all the bases that we could possibly cover, and I think we'll be ready when the time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vitale. Thank you for your work with that. Legislator Foley.
Okay, one item I forgot to update the legislature on was the vet's hiring process. So just to give background, because I think I've mentioned it at Ways and Means, I've mentioned it at Government Operations, but I'll mention it here as well. We are in the process of scheduling with candidates. We already have some set up, I believe, next week. That committee is reviewing and will meet with the candidates. So Jim Orman and believe Mike Russell did telephone interviews last week into this week, and then they set up actual in-person interviews to meet with the candidates for next week. I have heard from various constituents, legislators on the necessity of getting in a director as soon as possible. Hear you loud and clear. With that said, it's been kind of a long, tedious process. As everyone knows, we had Justice Dressel take another job, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago. At that point, we appointed the deputy as an interim temporary. At some point recently, she went out on a leave of absence. So that left us with only 2 part-time people in the office and without a acting director or deputy. So we started the hiring process. The committee was Mark Strong, myself, Jim Orman from the Vets Advisory Board, as well as Aileen. During that time period, and this is part of the long process, we have changed HR director. We unloaded. We started with 1 HR director, then we moved to another HR director during that process. That was Colleen. Colleen has been wonderful, but she didn't have a lot to go on. And a lot of notes and the details that she needed from the previous stuff that we had already accomplished. So we kind of started all over. At that point, she said, boy, this is a lot of work. Maybe you guys can utilize Mike Russell. And that was just approved last month, I believe. So we've been working with him. He's been doing a phenomenal job. But it's just been one of those things that information has fallen by the wayside. We've been trying to play catch up and going through a process of interviewing people isn't always the simplest either. So give us some time. We'll have something to present to this body for review for the next one.
We'll do Paul.
Just a quick question, right? Through this process, have we even talked to Larry about just coming in there and helping out on the phones or getting back to people? That's the only thing I'm getting some complaints on.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the time to do it, or?
So that was one of the things I think that our previous personnel was in communication with. We kicked around a lot of ideas, including trying to utilize previous directors, trying to utilize other workers from VAs that they maybe be able to come in and answer phones. Some of them didn't pan out, and I think some of them are still in process. That Mike is kind of checking into. I don't know if we had other ideas on there that you think of at the moment, but I mean, we talked about in order to solicit the best candidates we could, what a hiring bonus that other counties are doing for their directors. That was almost immediately shot down, but it was like everything was on the table. So yeah, it was discussed, Paul.
But they didn't reach out to me.
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, they didn't reach out to him. I think we were still looking into whether it would be feasible to do that, similar to how we did Mike Russell with HR, just to bring it temporarily to help out. But, we're also looking at the timeline here. If we're hiring, hopefully in the next month, how long would we need that person for? The damage is kind of already been done.
Any other legislative reports or questions? We'll do Mr. Strong.
Just a comment. Gentleman in my district, his name is Mr. Shaw, has passed away this week at the age of 106.
Yeah.
As best of my knowledge, he, at the time of his passing, he was the oldest military veteran in Cayuga County.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
That's
Amazing. Appreciate you sharing that tonight. We're sorry for his family. Mr. Lattimore?
Economic development, I know that I'd say, Congressman Bullard passed away, I remember flying down to get 600,000 for our digester out on County House Road. I was with the city at that time. It would be nice if we put something in the budget during the budget process to cultivate economic development. I know our neighboring county, they use like a 1.4 million in their economic development. I think our funds are a lot less than that. We might be able to come up with something, but back in January, I think I circulated cultivating opportunities in the new normal, a path to prosperity in the wake of pandemic and economic development strategy for Ontario County. I've never heard anything back from Tracy or anybody, but hopefully we can get a game plan together and go after them. Maybe for sewer and water, put a project in and maybe somebody might just come.
Yeah.
You put a pipeline in the desert, they might show up. So hopefully we can get some better ideas to advance economic development. What we have.
Well, I value certainly what other counties are doing. And it's really great to get feedback from other counties, but we are it's apples and oranges. We can be small and mighty. I'm not saying that, but we are apples and oranges to Onondaga County. And we are just a bit larger than the town of Clay in the county of Onondaga. So we need to have that perspective.
Well, hopefully with Amazon coming, we can maybe think about a satellite industry in our counties. Maybe,
I'm not saying.
I know that the cheese
because we're
factory,
small, we can certainly be mighty, but
cheese factory in Cayuga County, the county built a pad for them in some vacant land. So hopefully maybe we can have the Industrial Development Authority build another plan because that land is going to be filled.
I also do serve on the CETA committee. There is a search committee being formed and has been formed to search for the next director of CETA. So that is underway. It is going to be a challenge. I know Center State
Mr. Lattimore.
Center State CEO is down some folks over there. There's a lot of competition. I think a lot of companies have taken their economic development staff in-house. So we need to, we're going to be working really hard and try to come up with our best solution. And when we talk about restructuring our economic development, I believe that'll be a lot of the conversation we have with CETA moving forward.
I'd like to invite Magic Circle, who was on the phone this morning, to economic development meeting and maybe make a presentation in regards to what they want to do with the sound. I know it's in your district.
It is my district. They were my old neighbor.
Maybe we can grow that a little bit.
Sure. No, I think that's, going to be exciting about having a new person coming into that role in our county with CETA. So I'm sure we will continue to work hand in hand with them. Any other committee reports or legislature reports? Okay. I'm going to give you my sort of activities report for the past month. A few legislators and I attended the NISAC conference in person this month at the Hotel Syracuse. The conference was very informative as usual. Some of the topics discussed were the rescue funds, broadband, cybersecurity, sales tax, COVID, and vaccines, among other topics. I appreciate the folks who attended this year. It's always good. It was very good to see folks in person, to be able to have some of this, really good discussions, good networking event. And it was just nice to see everyone in one place. So it was really great to be able to do that. I was contacted by Senator Schumer's office about a visit to Cayuga County a couple weeks ago to discuss the infrastructure bill and broadband in our county specifically. I chose the Seymour Library as a site for the senator to visit to address the county. Seymour Library served as a symbol of all libraries and especially our rural libraries in our county, of how they have helped with the digital divide in our county. Before and during the pandemic, residents usually utilize library parking lots to download assignments for school. Also, I have the superintendent of Port Byron on site. Port Byron was very innovative and instrumental in getting a Wi-Fi bus available for their students to drive around to houses that were not able to connect in order for them to download assignments to get their assignments done for the day. I was able to share that story with Senator Schumer. He was very surprised. And while we applaud the district for being innovative in that way, it's really the government's responsibility to provide this utility to our residents. So it was great to have this discussion with Senator Schumer. We are excited about prospects to improve our broadband utility in this county, and he's on board to help us. So we was really excited to have him here a couple weeks ago. Budget meetings are underway. Oversight committee chairs are attending their respective committees, as well as our Ways and Means chair has been at almost all of the, and plans to be at all of the budget meetings. So we've had a few so far. Lynn left, I'm trying to think, I think we've had maybe 4. So we are in the throes of that. It's very busy. My calendar is very full. I'm looking at Max. My calendar is very full. And, you know, folks are prepared. There are areas, I think, where departments and maybe the county as a whole have neglected over time. So there may be some things in the budget that we need to improve upon. And we need to look critically at how we're spending and think about how to best provide for our departments so they can provide service delivery that we're charged to provide here in the county. So it's been good so far. I'm excited to meet with everyone again and be part of the process. We had our second shared services meeting with the City of Auburn, towns and villages. We're continuing to formalize existing agreements and look forward to new ways to partner for future savings. We're having some great discussions and some brainstorming. So that was successful. We're having good participation as well. So very happy to be part of that as well. I was honored to present a proclamation at the United Way picnic last Friday. Many of Cayuga County employees joined our volunteers for a day of giving where they weeded different areas around the county. They painted. We had some, I think Trish Kerr painted some beds at Camp Waiwasco. Mr. Pinchak, where were you
I was
stationed?
cleaning some community transport vans.
Oh, community transport vans, very good. So we had folks from various departments in the county helping out. And it was a great picnic, and I was really happy to deliver the proclamation to them. There are ongoing operational discussions, search committees, interview committees for key department level positions, as well as general restructuring discussions. I appreciate all the time and effort of everyone involved. You know, you mentioned the vets. We have we have interview committee for weights and measures. We're talking about parks separating from buildings. We're talking about DSS being dismantled again to form 2 departments. We have a lot of restructuring opportunities going on. Tonight in front of us, we have the finance department creation. You know, we have also key people like filling the real property director. A lot of things are happening here in the county. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank the employees that are affected with all the turnover and restructuring. I want to thank them for their hard work and commitment. I know it's not an easy time. COVID's not been an easy time for our employees. And right now, although these are, you know, we're looking forward and we're looking long-term with these restructuring and filling these key positions, I want to just thank them for all of their time and effort with us and being patient. So, at the Board of Health today, it was shared that the month of September netted 998 COVID positive cases in our county. That's the 3rd largest month for positive cases since the beginning of the pandemic. As I mentioned at our opening moment of silence, we lost 101 neighbors through this entire pandemic. So these numbers are continuing to climb. We did lose a young person just recently in the past day or 2. You know, this is still very, very alive and very present in our community. We need to protect ourselves. Please, if you haven't been already, have a discussion about getting a vaccine. and try to get your vaccine. It is the tool that we did not have last year. And this pandemic is still ravaging our county. So please stay safe. I mentioned last month, Don Carr set out an RFP on a needs assessment for the county office building. We hosted a pre-bid meeting last week, and there was about 25 interested firms who are, wanting to know more about providing for us a needs assessment for this building. I found the discussions to be very, very focused, very important. We certainly talked about organizational needs. We talked about physical needs. We talked about, all the options that we can provide for accessibility and service delivery in this county and how to best create our environment here. We talked about airflow, traffic flow. My biggest thing was accessibility for the elected officials, as well as when somebody comes to seek services, they're not going through 3 or 4 locked doors and getting into the inner sanctum of our offices where there's a lack of privacy. Right now we don't have a really good place for foster kids to hang out when they're in the middle of being processed. It's not a very family-friendly environment at times. We have only one ADA accessible bathroom here on the 6th floor. We have one changing station here on the 6th floor. So we can do better for our community. We can do better for our employees. Lynn has left, but I don't have the dates in front of me for the turnaround for the RFP, but I'll send them to you. I believe it's late October for the first sort of response. I'll get those to you. But it's exciting to think about investment here in ourselves. So overall, that concludes my report. Is there any questions for me? Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to resolutions. Let's start with Ways and Means with Legislator Batman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ways and Means has 7 resolutions. I know there will be some discussion on 1 and 7, so I would move that 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 be bundled unless there's an objection.
Second.
Okay, discussion. All in favor? Any opposed? Those are carried. Thank you.
And now, if I may move the Ways and Means 1, the appointment of Mary Beth Gleason as Director of the Cayuga County Finance Department.
Second.
Okay, discussion on this. Mr. Letterman.
Yes, I had a follow-up discussion with our treasurer, and I'm very satisfied with Jenny being appointed. At the Ways and Means, I didn't know Jenny had the qualifications for.
You mean Mary Beth?
Right.
Mary Beth.
We're on one.
Which one we doing?
Mary Beth Leeson as our
Director of Finance.
Director of Finance.
But we are going to do the other one after this.
No. Well, it's confusing. You said you're pulling
She's number
7, so.
1 and 7.
Well, I'm going to vote against that one because I believe that before we do that, we should hand out the hazard pay for people who worked during the pandemic, but I'll be voting no on.
So Ways and Means 1.
Ways and Means 1, yeah, is to appoint Mary Beth Leeson as Director of Cayuga County Finance Department. Any other discussion? Mr. Patrick?
I'm going to be voting no on it. I don't like the process that was used to introduce this. And secondly, I'm worried about the conflict of interest that it sets up between the treasurers and the finance department. Things have not been clarified. This is asking for trouble in the future. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed?
Are we moving on, Madam Chair?
Yeah, hold on. I want to make sure that Mr. Dennison and Mr. Whitman are with us and can hear us and are,
I was an aye.
okay.
I was in favor.
Thank you so much.
And now Ways and Means 7, which is appointing Jennifer Delacato as the Director of the Hughes County Real Property Services Department. I move that.
Second that.
Hey, discussion on this.
As I said before, after talking to our current treasurer, I'm satisfied with Jenny's qualifications for real property. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's it for Ways and Means.
Okay, Legislator Daily with Health and Human Services.
Yes, Health and Human Services had 13 resolutions this month. Been through committee, 13 was added at the Ways and Means meeting and discussed. It's the creation of 15 vaccination clinic support staff using the additional funds the health departments receive in terms of the COVID response. Will help the department get ready to increase testing and vaccination. So I would ask for bundle HH1 through 13 unless someone wants one of them separated.
I like 13 separated, please.
13 will be separated. So we're going to bundle 1 through 12.
12 to bundle.
Second.
Awesome. Discussion on resolutions 1 through 12. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those are carried. HH 13.
HH 13, that was brought forward prior to the Ways and Means meeting. There was discussion about the possibility of it coming in as an emergency resolution, although that didn't seem to be the appetite because they're looking at having these staff available in the beginning of October. So it didn't need to go through emergency. It could go through at least Ways and Means and be discussed on the floor. I was told these are 50 part-time employees, $20 per hour. Some of them would be used 3 to 5 hours a week, but it would be the hope to hire enough capacity so that when the health department puts up vaccination clinics for either initial vaccination or to start supporting the boosters when they're approved, as well as testing, that they have the support, non-clinical support staff to help them do this. In the past, there was staff from the various departments within the county health, the county's departments that did volunteer. That's not as likely to happen now. So these support staff, if they can get them identified and hired part-time, would be used to help with getting enough support to have, like I said, vaccination clinics as well as testing clinics. We also talked today that the governor has allowed the EMTs, basic EMTs, to now begin again vaccinating once they're trained and doing the testing. So that would allow the department to have capacity to at least start those particular clinics. And this resolution would allow the county health department to have enough staff to host them.
Mickey?
And then is that a reimbursable deal down the road possibly
The clinic itself,
for the dollars spent for those?
there's a significant amount of money that's come in for support for COVID work. So this would certainly be paid for. They reported today, Paul, at the Board of Health, that the administration that they're required to bill for, not the vaccine, because that's provided to us, but they have to bill for administration. They've gotten, in that area alone, over $115,000 for billing for administration. These positions, at the last resolve, would be abolished once, the need for the clinics are no longer there. So once that happens, the 15 part-time positions will be abolished.
The current debt, could it possibly be offset by future state money possibly?
Debt?
The cost of the length of time, if it's 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. Can that be submitted as part of?
I think it's being funded right now, except because we took another $85,000 in just this month.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
There's a significant amount of money available to offset these costs.
Thank you.
Further discussion, Mr.
Madam
Strong.
Chair, Elaine, you mentioned the EMTs. Are they going to be passed or paid? I mean, will they be paid?
I would think they would be paid, whether the county reimburses the departments they come from. I don't believe they're all volunteers.
No, they do get paid through the
Yes,
city.
they get paid with funds that are set aside for this
Mhm.
purpose as well.
They're reimbursed, and usually, that's how it was the first time.
Right.
We need a motion, a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll move it.
Second.
Further discussion on this? Latimer?
I'm all in favor of this. After we get done with this vote, I hope that Lane would talk about, I know there was supposed to be a health crisis at the hospitals because of people being mandated to get vaccinated. I don't know, you sit on that board?
I do.
Let's vote on this.
Yep,
and
we'll
then-
talk about that after resolution.
Right.
Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's
Opposed.
carried. We have one opposed. Noted. Thank you. All right, up next, we have Legislator Foley. Oh, government operations. you wanna have-
Bundle them all, let's go through.
Legislator Pinckney with planning resolutions.
Madam Chair, planning history resolution, went through committee.
Second.
Discussion on these three resolutions. Hearing none. All in favor? Any opposed? They are carried. Thank you. Legislator Whitman for Public Works.
Madam Chair, Public Works has two resolutions that have been through committees. I would like to offer them as a bundle unless anyone would like them separated.
Okay, we have a second, Mr. Strong. Any discussion on these? All in favor? Any opposed? They are carried. Thank you. Legislator Vitale, Judicial and Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Judicial and Public Safety has 5 resolutions. I'd like to bundle JP 1, 2, 3, and 5.
All right, we have the bundle 1, 2, 3, 5. And second in discussion on these 4 resolutions. All in favor? Any opposed? They are carried. Thank you. JP
And,
4.
I'd like to call for JP 4. This was discussed in executive session, and I think everything has been done that needs to be done for us to move our approval.
Get a second by Pinckney. Discussion on this.
Discussion.
Yes.
I think other counties, and I brought it up in executive session, but I'll bring it up on the floor. This body has had different lawsuits against it, above and beyond what we carry in insurance, which impacted our fund balance. And I think we should explore whether or not we want to continue with this form of operation or do a private-public situation, go out to bid and see whether or not these services can be handled by the private sector.
Mr. Vitale?
Madam, I don't know why you're looking at me to address this.
Because you were laughing.
But, no, I'm not laughing.
Hey.
But what I'll tell you is, it's not a bad idea. But it's okay. Can I speak now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I didn't interrupt you while you were talking. But I don't think it's a bad idea, but I think right now we need to move forward with what we have. And I would encourage the sheriff to look into alternatives so that we don't have the lawsuits that we might have had in the past. Thank you.
You did first and second? We do have. Okay. All in favor? Oh, Mr. Patrick?
Just a comment, I believe that planning number 3 has already been outdated. I believe the issue has been settled, the auction has been called off. Anybody else see that?
Mr. Pinckney, do you, or,
Bring us up to date, Hanson. What is it?
oh, I thought you were looking
The
at.
auction for the property on Cayuga Lake has been called off.
Good.
There's no need to pass this in opposition.
Mr. Bettman?
Yeah, I was aware of that, too, Mr. Petcher, thank you for bringing it up. But
Yes.
A couple of points, one, we passed it. Secondly, even though there may not be any particular efficacy at this point, given the fact that NICEAG has called off the auctions, NICEAG has not made any statements about not auctioning the property in the future. All we're saying is they postponed it. So it remains good that we've taken this position, remains good that we simply wanted the Apellis and Senator Kelman that sent their letter. And so I think to be on record is worthwhile, even though you're right, it's the option is for now postponed.
Thank you.
Have we even voted on JP4 yet?
Yeah.
No, a question on JP4, please.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That is carried. And thank you, Mr. Petrick, for your point. Before we go into executive session, Mr. Latimer brought up a good question. I think that's on everyone's minds about the vaccination protocols and mandates and how they're affecting our community. It has been a struggle for every health department, everyone who falls under the Article 43 or
Any healthcare.
any healthcare facility or long-term care facility or home care facility. And I don't know if you have anything you'd like to offer about how that's affecting our hospital, but you don't sit on that board as a member of this legislature, but
I was privy to the same information that I think everyone was privy to in the paper, that they released a statement that they, although they had some individuals, my understanding, that had not received the vaccination, they did not in a very good way feel that that was going to compromise at all any of the delivery of services at the hospital, which is good news. They had worked and prepared for that risk. And I think they were surprised. There were people who came forward and got vaccinated, and the ones that did not, I believe they feel they can continue to provide the same level of service in spite of that.
great. Any other business to come before the board before we go to executive session?
Motion to go on regular into executive.
I'd like to introduce the resolution.
We have a motion on the floor for,
I'd like to withdraw my motion.
okay, thank you.
I would, without belaboring all of this, I would like to bring a resolution forward tonight. It's the authorization of the creation and filling of the position of the operations officer. This is essentially the same resolution that failed in April. The only change has been the new grading system. The new grade 6 is in there based on the updated compensation plan that we just recently passed. This resolution, as I said, failed in April. I thought it was important then. I was, I guess, under the impression that it would be coming back at some point for reconsideration. It has not, so I'm introducing it tonight. And as you see, it's being introduced by myself and by Legislator Pinkley. So I would like to introduce this and have it be considered and voted on.
Move it forward.
Yeah, second.
Discussion. Mr. Whitman?
I don't remember what concerns I had back in April, but I'm guessing they're very similar to the ones I have now. I don't feel as though there's been a lot of discussion since April over what direction Cayuga County is going to go, in the now and in the future. This has been a discussion we've been having for years, and we've hired administrators, and that hasn't worked. We're in the middle of talks about our form of government and whether we want to go with a different form of government and go with an executive. We have a lot of these discussions, and this has been presented as a short-term solution for right now, which isn't all bad, but in our typical MO, I'm going to try and predict the future to what's going to happen is we're going to fill this position, and then in a year, we're going to extend this position because we haven't made any progress. We haven't made any progress in years. I don't anticipate we will make any progress in an election year. There's going to be an election. There's going to be new people that are going to come in. They're going to have new ideas. They're going to want to go in new directions, and we're not going to be any further ahead. Over the years, the only thing I've really seen that seems to consistently work is when we have to make a decision. And whenever we patch things with Band-Aids, it doesn't force us to make a decision. I would much rather have the bigger conversation and just get it over with and decide what we're going to do. To me, this is not a solution. It's just a Band-Aid, and I'm not in favor of another Band-Aid.
Legislator Dennison, and then we'll do Legislator Fetcher.
Well, going on what Tucker said, the other thing that I fear is, okay, if we switch our form of government to, an elected executive, what becomes of this position? Does it just, do we make the position so that we don't get rid of somebody? Because we tend to be notorious for that. And I've also said before that I know it's been discussed, well, the chair position salary will go down when this position becomes, reality. Well, how long will that take? I mean, is it going to be ahead of time? Is it going to be months afterwards? Will there have to be more public hearings about it? I mean, it just, I don't know.
Okay, Mr. Fetcher?
Basically, I'm echoing what Tucker said, in particular, the idea that in a few months, we have a new legislature. A lot of the people that are here now are not going to be there. There'll be new people, so I think it's unfair to make a change such as this, which is basically returning to the county manager position. And another question I have is the chair's salary going to be reduced proportionately to what it was raised? So are we going to go back to the 60,000 if we institute this position? We're growing government again, and I don't think that's what this county needs, more government and fewer people. Thank you.
Legislator Pinckney?
So I've battled back and forth with this for a couple of years. And this using the form of government, whatever that's going to be down the future, is one avenue you can think about and talk about till you're blue in the face, till you make a decision. But until then, we decided years ago that we needed somebody else helping out there. So if you're hung up on 30 grand and the chair, be it whatever party, and another person help them, maybe that's what it takes to help on this town. If you don't believe so, then we'll go with the pace we're going right now, where things are not totally getting done. So I will support this. It's long overdue. It's a short-term fix, possibly. Meanwhile, you've got all the time in the world to decide which way you want to go with what government you want to be. Thank you.
Legislator Foley?
Yeah, so, some of the things that I'm hearing tonight, I also heard back in April, in terms of, well, we don't know what form of government we're going to, so maybe we should hold off on this one. And I absolutely detest when those same legislators haven't done a lick of work on any form of government to try to either solve that problem so that we can get some type of form that they would be willing to go with, and at the same time being unwilling to support this position. I think that it really is disingenuous to this county, and I wish that ultimately they can see the benefits of having this position and also trying to work on finding what form of government would be appealing to them and to taxpayers, and would also be willing to work on it. Chris Petras has been working on that for as long as you've been up here, and to the best of my knowledge, there's not many legislators that have reached out to him in terms of saying, how can I help you on this? We do have information coming forward to us, and this is where it ends up right here.
Do we have information coming forward?
He's gathering it. The last update we had, I think, at Government Operations, was that he was working with Chris Palermo in trying to get somebody from Syracuse University to come talk to us, what a charter may look like or an executive form of government. But that's been, just a kind of a work in progress for them.
Mr. Pinckney,
Call the question.
call the question.
We have a roll call.
Roll call vote.
I think that was the slide.
Tucker Whitman, I'm sorry, can you say that again?
No.
Andy Dennison,
No.
Ben Vitale,
Yes.
Chris Petrus is excused. Paul Pinckney,
Yes.
Keith Batman,
Yes.
Hans Petcher,
No.
Mark Strong,
No.
Heidi Nightingale,
Yes.
Elaine Daly,
Yes.
Trisha Kerr,
Yes.
Timothy Lattimore,
No.
Michael Didio,
Yes.
Ryan Foley,
Yes.
Aileen McNabb Coleman.
Yes.
That is passed.
Madam Chair, just for clarity, Chris Petrus's vote, is it a no because he's not here? Or is it no vote?
He's a no vote, which does not count as a yes vote, so it is a technically against the yes
does go
total,
against.
so.
Just for clarification for the public.
I just wanted to, I was thinking about whether or not I'd heard this may come up again, so I was reflecting on, the past several months that I've been in this position, as well as the time since the pandemic, as well as since April. We, the county, collectively have been in this fight to move the county forward without key personnel since January 2020. Personnel that was needed to serve as a champion for our operations and personnel that was needed to direct this county through a pandemic for all these months. Now, without rhyme or reason, there's a sudden change of heart. It wasn't important 1 month after the failed vote in April. It wasn't important 2 months after the failed vote. Now it has become politically expedient. Now you see the value. And all I can say on behalf of myself, the employees and department heads, and the taxpayers who have already been paying for this, I'm glad you showed up. That's all I have to say. Okay. With that, can I get a motion to go into executive session?
I'll try that again. I'll second.
We'll go ahead into executive session. Go ahead.
Reason we're going to executive session.
Any business? into session.
Motion.
Second by Mark. That's motion to come back into from the contract negotiations.
Yes, we were out for
Yes.
contract negotiations. I didn't state that before we went mute. So, motion to come back in a second. Motion to adjourn.
Wait a minute, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I may have missed this, but if I did miss it, forgive me. If I did, could the minutes show that we went to executive session for contract negotiations?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
just
we
said
did.
that.
We did.
Okay, sorry.
Motion to adjourn, Madam Chair.
All right, second.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.